Te hei mauri ora kia tātou. Pāpaki tuana ngā tai ki mawao I whakaneke hia, I whakanukunuku hia. I whiu rere tia e hotu a wahine rua ki te wai, ki tai wiwi, ki tai wāwā, ki te whai ao, te hei mauri ora. Ki ngā mātā waka katoa ko tai mai tēnei rangi, nau mai, hara mai, piki mai. Piki mai ki tēnei, me ki ake tēnei wāhanga e tuku nei ngā whakaaro ki o tātou tamariki mokopuna, mō tō rātou mahi I roto I te kuratini o Poike I tēnei tau. Nō reira, ki ngā whaia, ngā mātua, ngā tamariki, ngā mokopuna, ngā mātā waka ko tatu mai nei tēnei rangi, tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou. Nei rā me ino I tātou. E tō mātou matua nui o te rangi, kia tapu tō inga. He honore, he krorea ki te atua, he maunga rongo ki te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa, hangaia te atua, he ngā kauhau, ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatongia tō wairua tapu, hei āpina, hei manaki a mātou, I roto I te ingoa tapu ehu kraiti, ake, āmine.
Please be seated. Ko te pai te whiti kimi hea kia mau, ko te pai tāta whakamaua kia tīna, humi e hui e, to ai ki e. Kia ora huhu mā tātou, e nā rangatira, nā mai haramai ki tēnā kura, te kuratini o Poike. Welcome to Bay Plenty Polytechnic and our graduation ceremony. Haramai e nā mātua, haramai e nā hoa, haramai e nā kaiako, haramai e nā tauira. Particular welcome to family, friends, and to the staff of Bay Plenty Polytechnic, and most of all, of course, what today's event is about, which is our graduating students, our tauira. Haramai e te manihiri tuarangi, a particular warm welcome from those who have had to travel afar to be with us today. Haramai e te whanau mo tēnei hakari. Welcome to our family and to our celebration. I'd like to recognise that joined on stage this afternoon, as well as the staff of the School of Design and Humanities led by Jill Brockus, I have the chairperson of Bay Plenty Polytechnic Council, Ian Turner, and Member of Council, Paul Logan. and welcome, and a special welcome to any other guests that have joined us today on stage. This is a celebration. It's our Students' Day, and we're going to focus on our students. But it's important, I think, to recognize that the reason why we're here today is because of their commitment and their hard-earned qualification that we celebrate. But very few of us achieve anything in life alone. And so at the outset, I'd like to recognize three groups who I believe, to varying degrees, have been essential to our students successfully reaching today's graduation. First of all are the families and friends who've encouraged and supported throughout what in many cases may be 2-3 years of study. Secondly are the students' colleagues themselves. The collegiality and support through their program hopefully has made friendships that will last a lifetime, and try and keep connected with those students. Those friendships will be worth a fortune in later years. And finally, the third group, and we're very blessed at Bay Plenty Polytechnic to have a very committed and very professional group of academic and administrative staff. This afternoon are the staff of the School of Design and Humanities, led by Head of School Jill Brocas. And I would like you to join with me in recognising the staff of the School of Design and Humanities. I'm just going to say a few words, first of all, about your success as graduates, and then a couple of walks into the future, and to lay down a couple of challenges for our graduating students. But first of all, about your success, don't underestimate it. We do not give tertiary qualifications away. They're hard-earned and they're respected. And it is now up to you to use those qualifications and all the skills and abilities that you've learned during your time at Bay Plenty Polytechnic to better your life and that for your family and for now. The skills that we are graduating today are needed by New Zealand Aotearoa. And if you look at the programs that are graduating, we have early childhood education, we have mental health. And in a week that sees the OECD report that New Zealand has slipped further down the chart in terms of child poverty, it's particularly appropriate that perhaps we say a few words in regard to health and the more vulnerable of our society. It would be dismissed, maybe partially, that report, as just another comparative report, if it were not for the fact that Russell Wills, the Child Commissioner, has today published his report on child poverty in New Zealand. And it completely reinforces last week's report. We have a doubling of child poverty numbers throughout the 90s. And if we look at the impact of poverty in terms of health, we have a 12% increase in the past 4 years of admission to hospital of children who are bearing the signs of the impact of poverty. And I would suggest that for a nation that calls itself a developed nation, that is something that's totally unacceptable. And I'll touch on it in a few more seconds when I issue a challenge to our graduates. So undoubtedly the skills in the health area that we're graduating today are needed. The skills in early childhood education are also crucially needed. We've had yet another OECD report a week ago around where our education stands, and again, it is slipping down the international ladder. And it is well proven through a whole series of longitudinal surveys that investing in preschool education does pay off for the individual, for the whānau and the family, and for the country. It creates more stable citizens, it creates more stable families, it improves the prospects of employment, it reduces the prospects of going into crime and drugs, and therefore that's why we must take very seriously the reason and the demands for why we must invest and make preschool education accessible to all. We have programs in graphic design and in music. And the creative arts, the creative industries are a real touchstone, a thermometer of the healthiness of a society and a community. And it's noticeable on campus that those programs, together with art programs, the radio programs, actually bring an energy to our campus life. And for those students, I thank them for that contribution. But the creative aspect of a society is proven to develop a society that is more productive, is more tolerant, and is more capable of developing into the future. We also have graduating today a couple of programs in the service areas, and it's very easy to dismiss the service industries and the service sectors. They are, in fact, a vital cog in the performance of any country. 2/3 of our employment is in the service sector, and 2/3, or slightly more than 2/3 of our GDP comes from the service industries. So again, the service sector and the strength of that service sector is indicative of a developing country, it's indicative of economic growth, and it's also indicative of a country that is capable of modernization. So to all our graduates today, the skills that you are leaving Bay of Plenty Polytechnic with are vitally needed by your country, by New Zealand Aotearoa. At this point, I would normally make a quote that goes something like this: "Education is the most powerful weapon for change in the world." And the author of that quote was Nelson Mandela. So it would be remiss of me if I did not recognize the passing of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was brought up in oppression, in fear, in injustice. He spent 27 years on Robben Island in prison for his beliefs and his values. Coming out from Robben Island, he subsequently became the first democratically elected Prime Minister of South Africa. What he presented to the rest of the world in the 95 years he was on Earth was a towering figure of compassion, of forgiveness, and a huge vision for the unity of his rainbow nation, South Africa. The Archbishop of Westminster, I was reading an article where he was doing an obituary for Nelson Mandela. And he said in the 27 years in prison, he melted the fear and the oppression and the injustice into forgiveness. And he forged out of that reconciliation. And that's the path that he took his country. Just to complete the memory of this extremely impressive man who left a towering agenda for the world from a leadership perspective, I'd just like to give 4 short quotes from him as well. The first one is regarding education, when he said, "Even in fiscal austerity, education is much, much, much more than just an expense." Second one is about our children. We owe it to our children, the most vulnerable members of our society, to be able to live their life without fear or violence. And one that was personally directed at himself: "Do not judge my success, but by the number of times I have fallen and got back up again." And finally, social equity is the basis of all human happiness. You are graduating with your qualifications today. I've already suggested you must not underestimate those. But what I do want you to do is recognize that you are also now a role model. A role model, going back to the first quote from Nelson Mandela, that is the most powerful weapon for change in the world. You are an influencer on others within your family, within your community, about the importance of training, the importance of upskilling, and the impact it can have on families, whānau, and community. Be humble in your success, but be willing to stand up and advise and influence others. Set your goals high as you go forward. This is only one stop on your journey, during a lifetime journey of learning. So set your goals high. Nobody has any right to challenge whether you're setting your goals too high. And go out and make it happen. Whaia te ita kaharangi, ki te tuahu, ko mehe mona tete. And when you have to bow your heads, make it to the loftiest peaks or mountains. The second challenge I would like to issue to our graduates is that as you leave us today and go out into the next stage of your life, be an active citizen of your country, an active citizen of your society and your community. Be the voice that's prepared to speak out for those that are less fortunate than you, that are more vulnerable than you, for the weak, the poor, the homeless, the aged, the sick, the disabled. Steve Jobs, the CEO of Apple, said, believe in yourself. Live your life, not what someone else thinks your life should be. And most of all, don't let the opinions of others drown out what your inner voice tells you. Have the courage, have the faith and belief to go with what your heart and your intuition tells you. Stand up and make a difference for yours and everyone else. To our graduates, kia kaha, be strong. Kokoto koapapo, because you are our people of tomorrow. It's been a privilege to have you at Bay of Plenty Polytechnic, and I thank each and every one of you for the contribution that you've made to the institution whilst you were with us. The karakia I opened with, ko te pai te whiti ki mihi kia mau, ko te pai tata whakamaua kia tina, says, as you seek your future in distant horizons, hold fast to the skills and the strengths that you have and build on them. I wish you a very happy Christmas and a wonderfully successful new year. Nō reira e hoama, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And it now gives me great pleasure to introduce the head of the School of Design and Humanities, Jill Brokers.